We are living through an age of compound disruption. Technological acceleration collides with ecological breakdown. Political systems fracture under the weight of disinformation and inequality, and cultural identities are continuously reshaped by migration, digitization, and ideological contestation. In this volatile and nonlinear world, the tools that once served to organize knowledge, academic disciplines, institutional silos, and professional categories, often fail to keep pace with the complexity we are called to navigate. In response, a new kind of design practice is emerging, one that refuses the stability of disciplinary borders and embraces the in-between as its generative space. This is the domain of antidisciplinarity, a mode of thinking and making that thrives not in the synthesis of knowledge fields, but in their dissonance, collision, and mutual contamination. It is less about integrating disciplines harmoniously and more about activating the friction between them. Antidisciplinarity is not a methodology in the conventional sense. It does not offer a universal toolset or fixed procedure. Rather, it is a stance, an attitude, and a way of being in the world. It invites practitioners to inhabit the uncertain, to dwell in the contradictions between data and poetics, between systems and bodies, between the symbolic and the sensorial. It cultivates what might be called epistemic curiosity, a willingness to learn through unlearning, to prototype new ontologies, to embrace the risk of not knowing in order to generate something genuinely new. To understand antidisciplinarity visually, imagine the disciplines, architecture, biology, philosophy, engineering, dance, sociology, as black dots dispersed across a white sheet of paper. These dots are fixed, codified, institutionalized. Antidisciplinary practice doesn't aim to occupy any of these dots. Instead, it activates the white space between them, the undefined terrain where disciplines blur, fold, or rupture. In this space, new constellations are drawn. The lines are not predefined routes, but invented pathways, traced through acts of experimental connection. In this white space, knowledge becomes a tactile material. Disciplines do not disappear, they are deformed, reassembled, hybridized. Artists collaborate with synthetic biologists to choreograph microbial life. Architects borrow from gaming logic to imagine speculative infrastructures. Designers code wearable emotions using affective computing and haptic feedback. These collaborations are not interdisciplinary in the academic sense. They do not preserve the identity of each field, but rather transgressive, porous, and often uncomfortable. Antidisciplinarity activates what might be called epistemic friction, the creative tension that arises when assumptions are challenged, vocabularies fail, and new logics must be invented on the spot. This friction is not a flaw, it is the motor of invention. It propels the project forward not despite the incompatibility of perspectives, but because of it. Practically, antidisciplinarity requires radical openness within teams and processes. It calls for collaboration not just across skills, but across epistemologies, ways of knowing, sensing, and structuring reality. Teams must be designed as living laboratories, where knowledge is rehearsed rather than applied, and where each participant is both expert and learner. These laboratories may take the form of hybrid institutions, part studio, part workshop, part critical theory salon, or exist as temporary, self-organized collectives that dissolve once their experiment is complete. Innovation, in this context, is not a product to be delivered. It is a negotiation between materials and ideas, between constraints and dreams, between what is technically possible and what is imaginatively urgent. Antidisciplinary practice assumes that knowledge is not neutral, that design is never innocent, and that every act of making is also an act of world-making. Two conceptual terrains, new media art and speculative design. Within this fluid space, two powerful conceptual territories have emerged, new media art and speculative design. Each provides a rich terrain where antidisciplinary approaches are not only welcomed but essential. New media art is not about adding technology to art, it is about rethinking art through the lens of computation, networks, and synthetic systems. It encompasses a wide array of practices, from generative algorithms to robotic sculpture, from immersive XR environments to biosensorial installations. These works are not static representations but living systems, responsive to their environments, often co-authored by machines and audiences. With the rise of generative AI, artists now explore authorship as a distributed process. The distinction between creator and tool collapses. Language models write poems, neural nets remix archives, sensors translate emotional states into kinetic choreography. In this landscape, art becomes less a product and more a performative protocol, a system of relations that unfold over time. New media art challenges the temporality of traditional media. It creates nonlinear experiences that defy passive consumption and demand cognitive and affective engagement. It is not uncommon for the audience to become part of the artwork's data stream, shaping its behavior in real time. The artist becomes a designer of conditions, a coder of sensorial infrastructures. Where new media art plays with perception and interaction, speculative design plays with temporality and ethics. It is a practice of imagining and materializing alternative futures, not as predictions but as provocations. It does not aim to solve problems but to reframe questions, destabilize assumptions, and reveal the social, political, and ecological implications of emerging technologies. Speculative design draws from science fiction, systems theory, critical design, philosophy of technology, and aesthetic inquiry. It creates artifacts, scenarios, and immersive experiences that function as what-if machines. What if AI were a spiritual guide rather than an optimization engine? What if cities were grown instead of built? What if synthetic organisms demanded civil rights? These speculative propositions are not utopias or dystopias. They are tools for reflection. They enable users, institutions, and publics to inhabit alternative logics, test the limits of plausibility, and exercise their imaginative agency. They foster a capacity to think beyond the probable into the realm of the possible and the preferable. Taken together, new media art and speculative design do not offer closure. They offer openness to ambiguity, contradiction, and critical imagination. They invite artists, researchers, curators, and cultural producers to rehearse new ways of being in the world, new gestures of attention, new forms of empathy, new vocabularies for resistance, care, and collective imagination. In a world increasingly shaped by artificial cognition, algorithmic governance, and synthetic environments, antidisciplinarity and speculation offer more than novelty. They offer relevance. They help us not just visualize the future, but prototype its aesthetics, its infrastructures, and its ethics. They allow us to imagine otherwise. And in times like these, that may be our most urgent cultural task.